Well, welcome to our business luncheon today with the company LucaNet and Robert from LucaNet. We also have David Nissen and Danielle Medin from PKF here. We're going to give it a few more moments for our systems to allow everyone in, and then we're going to get started. Yeah, I think our internet connections everywhere in the United States might be a little busier than usual today because everybody's waiting for, the election results to show up. I think we're just going to wait a few more moments. And there's our participants coming in right now. I think we should get started. Welcome to our virtual business luncheon today with LucaNet North America. I'm so happy that we have Rob Lawson here. Rob is the managing director of LucaNet North America. I'm excited to hear your story, how your company conquered the United States and partnered with companies here in the United States to be successful. As you choose a little bit of housekeeping that we have here. I'm sorry, I was too fast with the presentation. All the participants are going to be on mute. If you have a question, please feel free to type your question into the question box. You might see that on the top right hand of your screens, or raise your hands. And after Rob's presentation, we're going to put you through, and you can either ask your question yourself, or we're going to read it to Robert. Also, please introduce yourself briefly before asking your question. In the background, there is our amazing events and membership team working and making sure that all the technology works. So I'm too fast with this one here. We've got Francisca in the background taking care of all of that, and I'm happy to introduce you also to Jules. Jules Voss, our manager of membership engagement. He's here for you with all your questions membership related. With that, before we start, we just got, and I'm trying to make this happen right now to at least show you what I'm talking about. We've got the most recent numbers and figures in from our World Business Outlook. Our World Business Outlook, and Francisca, let me know, can you see the slides or the pages right now from the World Business Outlook, or do I have to share another screen?
You have to share another screen. I can't
see it. I have to share another screen. So let me try to do that. Here we go, because what I wanted to show you, I think now it should work. Can you see those numbers?
Yes, it's working now.
Okay, so two things. First of all, sorry that this is still in German, and this is the raw data that we just received. This is the most recent results of our World Business Outlook, where we asked German subsidiaries all over the world of questions about what their expectations are for next year. What I did is earlier this morning, I just pulled this data for the United States. Again, we didn't even have the time to translate that into English or come up with a nice presentation, but there is 2 or 3 things that I would like to highlight to get us in a good mood. When we asked our companies what their expectations are in terms of jobs and staffing that they're looking to in 2021, 43% of the companies, 44% actually, do not think that they're going to have to deal with major layoffs. And in fact, 36.8% answered that they see that they're going to hire additional staff next year. So that's a pretty positive outlook right now. Looking at this year and all the major issues we had to deal with this year in terms of the pandemic, I want to show you one thing where we asked the companies, what is the biggest impact this pandemic situation had on your business, and where do you see that? So in the answers that we got was almost 90% were referring to the travel restrictions here in the United States. So you could not get people into the US or vice versa to Germany. 57 or 58% were referring to the biggest impact was the cancellation of trade fairs or events, and then the postponing or cancellation of investments, either their own investments or investments by business partners, were a huge challenge here. But what I think is actually a pretty positive outlook, and then I'll let it be here with this one, is we asked the companies, when do you think the economy in the United States is going to recover? And the results are pretty clear. 47% believe that the economy is going to recover in 2021 already, and 33% have a little more of a, feet on the brakes here. They think that the economy is going to recover in 2022. Actually, that's pretty amazing, because I personally was thinking that it might take a little longer, and that companies are planning, for a little longer, more time for the economy to recover. With that, again, that's the raw data. We didn't even have time to translate that. We're working on it and make it available to you. And without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Danielle Medin or Dave Nissen from PKF Mueller. Thank you so much for being with us here, and also thank you for sponsoring the entire thing. And there's also a special connection between you and LucaNet. So David, Danielle, the stage is yours.
Well, thank you, Mario. Thanks for the handoff. And I got to tell you, the pandemic has been really interesting, as everybody knows, and challenging. But I'm calling in from Dallas, Texas, which is interesting when you think about it, because, it seems like the one thing the pandemic has done has been able to use technology more effectively in all of our businesses. And I think that's been a really big value to all of us American companies. So what I'm really happy about today is we've got Rob Lawson, Managing Director of LucaNet USA, which is a technology company, by the way. So I was trying to come up with a segue for you, Rob. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting, because I think technology is very valuable these days, because everything's faster. Everything has to get faster. We have to get we want to know our numbers faster, because if we know our numbers faster, you can manage faster. And, I remember some smart person told me probably 20 years ago, when you don't measure, you can't manage. Okay, so it's really very important is if you can't measure your financial results on a timely fashion, you're not gonna be able to manage it. So I think that's what LucaNet USA has done. That's why we really embraced it as a firm with PKF Mueller. And again, when I've got Danielle on the call with me too, because she's really the brains behind the operation. I just get to drink some good German beer once in a while. So with that, without any further ado, I want to turn it over to Rob. Rob, we're very interested in hearing your presentation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank Dave and Mario. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. I think this is the second time now I've gotten to speak for this group, and I always love coming through. I think the first time I did this, though, we had a very, very nice lunch, and we all got to sit together and converse. And this one's obviously a little bit different. I'm actually coming to you from my home, and you're quite lucky, because on this wall here, I used to have some Halloween decorations, and I just got down. So thankfully, it's a little bit more cleaned up around here. Before I start, can you guys see my slide deck? Because it's hard for me to see if that's working.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. So we set up why I'm here and what I want to talk about with everybody. Mario actually mentioned I'm going to talk about how we conquered the U.S. and I think I definitely don't want to give you that impression, because conquering the U.S. is impossible, as we've found over the past couple of days. So in the end, what we're going to talk about is really how we grow. How did we start from being a very domestic German business, and how did we bring that from there to become a global entity? What were sort of the key issues that we saw along the way, and how do we mitigate them? So jumping into it, this is what we're going to go through today. So I kind of run through this agenda with you so we can go in. Now, I'm going to forewarn you, there's two ways that we can do these kind of presentations. We can do them very, very seriously and dry and go right through them. Or there's a little bit more fun and a little bit more corny. And given the environment we're in right now with Corona and the restrictions, I think we're going to stick with the corny and fun. So, you know, apologize, please laugh at my jokes to make me feel better. That would be great. So as we go through it, who is LucaNet? So we are a software company that specializes in financial reporting and metrics. But if we were to just kind of go through our origin story, that wouldn't be very fun. So really, what do we focus on? Who are we as a company? And we like to see ourselves as sort of the smiling faces of our clients. What can we do to make our clients' life better? In the world of finance, obviously, is how we focus this. But really, in the end, what we sell is a better lifestyle for our client base. It has been very successful. It's always been successful in Germany. When we started 20 years ago, we started by growing in Germany. We grew out to what we call the GACC region, so the German-speaking countries. We brought that over throughout Europe, started expanding east, and in 2017, we expanded west here into my hometown of Philadelphia, and then have grown out from there. What we focus on as a software provider is really the preparation and financial close, going through your reporting processes, your planning processes, data management. How do we take those core functionalities and really then get to somebody, to a smiling face, that smiling customer? And that's always been our goal. And that's really what our focus will be going forward. It has been very, very successful. So we do have over 10 offices around the globe with nearing on 3,000 customers in 50 countries. So we are a growing company. We continue to grow, whether it's through Corona or the next Black Swan event that's going to come through. Digitalization is here to stay, as we kind of preluded into here. And so we are at the forefront, and we are in a very good position to continue to grow. So let's talk a little bit about our positioning and identity, and let's talk about it with some context as far as maybe the German and the American differences, or as I like to call it, differences between sausage and cheeseburgers. In the end, I think those are very typical items for us to kind of compare. So when we look at the first things that happened when I moved here, the first key points of differentiation, or really where we sit now, a lot of the stuff that was coming out of Germany was focused on, obviously, the German market. Even our catchphrase, things like simplicity is wunderbar, has German words in it. And unless you're a beer producer or a car manufacturer, you don't really want to see or need to see the fact that it comes from Germany. That's not really the core value that you're going to provide. So we had to make some changes there and really just focus on, some very direct messaging that people would understand. As we go through some of these core differentiations, you'll start to see that there is a focus on standardization in one field and sort of self-governance and self-control, versus in the US, where it's going to be more service-oriented and very much customer focused. So as we go through, things like on-premise installations of software still are the prevailing sales processes within Germany, where in the US it's more of a cloud-based solution that we're offering. One of the keys that we had to sort of determine as we were growing in the US is really where can we differentiate ourselves from our parent company to grow, but at the same time not cause an onerous overhead expense to maintain that differentiation. And so we had to go through and kind of draw lines within our business model what we're willing to change, what we're willing to present differently, versus what we're not willing to change. And so here are the main items that we really do kind of focus separately and position ourselves differently than what we see from, the sausage land. And for us, what we decided was, from a software perspective, nothing really should change. We shouldn't be developing for industry or for country-specific needs. Because in the end, we can kind of say they're all very similar. But what we can do is we can say, well, how do we position that product? How do we emphasize certain values of that product across different markets? And that's something that is sustainable for us. So all of these items are in the same product, and we just kind of position it differently. This allows us to really improve our market share, but at the same time, keep our costs down and trying to manage these differences going forward. I really think that's the key for growing internationally. You have to identify sort of what you need to do to differentiate and balance that against the value and the cost of it. So how did we get to the point where we're at, where we're a little bit different? So I have a little bit of a unique experience when it comes to LucaNet and growing internationally. So I actually started working for LucaNet about 5 years ago in Germany, and I worked there for about 1.5 years. So I had a good understanding of what we were and who we were, especially in that market. When I decided to move back here to Philadelphia and open this office and start producing a market share here, we had to start saying, okay, well, how do I build this brand? Because it is very new. And of course, all the typical things that I would think to build a brand, things like digital presence, website, pay-per-click advertising, how do we get our name out there across this huge country in a very easy way? I went to our marketing team and I asked them, hey, where's all this information in Germany and how can we get this converted over to the US? And the first thing they said to me was, it doesn't really exist. Of course we had a website, but it was from 1999, to be honest. So it really just wasn't a focus. The building a brand through a digital presence wasn't a focus. They had a customer base, they had the word of mouth, and they had telesales, which worked really well in those countries. So they didn't need to really focus on these areas. So this was really one of the first challenges that I had to overcome. Was one, you have to educate within your own group why this has to be different here. And that was something that was very easy to achieve, because I think people understand the size and scale of the US market and what really needs to be done. But then obviously you have to start creating that material, and that's really where the time invested goes. And the hope was that we already had some assets out there that we could just utilize. What we started to notice was that most of the materials, most of the assets, the primary language were, of course, in German. Perfect example of these types of situations was what Mario just showed you. The first iteration of that report was all in German. Obviously, we can't utilize that here in the US, right? So we have to go through a process of converting that to English. And then that sort of leads us to another problem. When we did already have English content, where we did begin translating to English content, it was the wrong form of English. And it really just helps to show that you're not really fit for this market when you're putting S's where there should be Z's, in my opinion. So we actually had to go through and decide, okay, one, the official language of our company is now going to be English because we're growing globally. But which form of English? Because there's a lot. So we had to go and make these small decisions that seemed like small decisions, but they actually were quite large, and they did impact the whole company simply because we started expanding globally, particularly here in the US. Not just from an asset standpoint, but we also had to redefine our approach to the market. So when we look at how how we've grown historically in the German market, we were able to sell to that country and to other German-speaking regions directly with basically the exact same approach. So we had, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, we call that the GACC market. And it is, while they are different cultures, they are still relatively similar. You can still sort of interact in those cultures the same way. So really there's just a one-size-fits-all to grow out. When we came to the US, we said, okay, fine, let's conquer, as Mario said, let's conquer the entire country. It doesn't work that way. There's very unique cultures within the US, even though we're one continent. There was an article in The Economist I read, I want to say it was about 2 years ago, that defined America as 11 distinct cultures. So when you're thinking about how you approach the market, you have to appeal yourself to those cultural differences. So it's really not a one-size-fits-all, here's my sales materials and just distribute it out. You have to focus individually in specific regions, which may be, you know, in the Deep South, what their particular economy looks like, how they interact with people, what their expectations are, versus West Coast and the Northeast. And all of that's different. And it wouldn't be, that disparity really isn't shrinking, right? It's growing, as we can tell. And that really trickles down all the way through to how we treat our relationships. So what we had to start thinking about is, how do we try to tackle this country in a more manageable way with the expertise that we have, and we had to begin focusing on the core regions that we knew that we would be immediately successful with the sort of the positioning and ideas that we had, and then take it from there and kind of go from city to city, land and expand. And that's sort of our approach at the moment. That approach also lends to sort of this next big issue or challenge that we face that we just weren't expecting in the beginning. And that's the individual legality and tax law of these different counties, states, and cities. You would think you're in America, here's how you operate, here's your contract, and here's how you do your financials. It doesn't work that way. There's different laws, there's different tax code. It's all different depending on where you're going. It could be from city to city, from county to county, from state to state. And in order to manage that, you either need to have experts in-house, which now you have an overhead cost you weren't expecting, or you could bring in some value-added partners. And I got to say, for all of these challenges, we weren't doing and making these changes on our own. We had to do this through some relationships that we built. So when we talk about the brand recognition and the digital presence and the changing of assets, we had a partnership that I established here out of Philadelphia to help grow us from a marketing perspective into a more modern or a more US-driven approach. And then from the legality and from the tax side, that's where we really start talking about some of the other relationships we have, one of them being PKF, which is really how we got to this point. On top of that, because PKF has been operating, PKF Mueller has been operating in this market for so long, they actually could help us with some of these other ideas as well, helping us understand, well, you know what, there may be a different approach to this market. Here's, you know, how people in Illinois really would respond to this product, or here's the advantages. The partnerships don't just have to be contractual, right? They don't just have to be, I have an objective, I need you to go provide a service and satisfy that objective. They're really more relationship driven. There's a lot of work that we do together with all of our partners that really has no basis in sales, has no basis in revenue, but really has a basis in just building relationships. And we found that to be incredibly important. So how did these development and challenges really lead to some of the focuses that we have now? So as a company right now, we are very digitally oriented, as I mentioned. So how are we going to tackle this country without a tremendous amount of footprints on the ground or boots on the ground? And actually that's served to be very beneficial to us during the Corona times, because obviously we can't travel. So it doesn't matter if we have boots two meters down, we're not going to be able to get to them. We've emphasized self-education. I don't know how many of you guys, especially now, are getting calls, text messages from people you don't know, trying to sell you something or convince you of something. In the US, we very much appreciate the ability to self-educate. I'd always like to take the example of buying a new television, which is, you know, it's a moderate purchase for any family. And you go through and you end up reading all sorts of reviews on which television to buy, and you know, which is going to be 5 stars versus 4.5, and God forbid you ever go to 4.2, you'll never buy that TV, right? So if the ability to self-educate yourself on this product is not there, you'll never purchase it because you'll never be confident enough. And that's been a huge focus for us going forward, particularly here in the US. We've talked about the language and we've talked about the US Economic Center. So these are the things that we really did and developed to make changes so that we better perform here. And here's an opportunity. You saw their wonderful faces a minute ago, and I just want to bring them back around to talk about PKF Mueller and how they've supported us. So when we first started here, we actually had another accounting and consultancy firm helping us begin our business in the US. And as time was going on, that company actually came from Germany. They have some subsidiaries here in the US. And we ended up being very dissatisfied with them. They really, at least from my perspective, so from a global perspective, they're still using that company because they really do understand the German market, and that's okay. But from a US perspective, they struggled. We missed a lot of our tax code, our tax payments that we should have had, tax filings. We didn't understand proper visa registrations. And through my partnership with Mueller, we solved all of those issues. We solved them in a unique, customer-centric way. They build out special processes to help us get through this, and it was a very great process for us to go through. In the end, the reason that Mueller is so effective for us personally is because they have that really specific US knowledge that's needed, but it doesn't stop there. They have the ability to go back to Germany, speak with their German counterparts, and really understand that language as well. So in the end, I kind of attribute them directly to myself, where I grew up, I've been in the US my entire life. I get this market, I understand it. But my experience and my time spent in Germany is also very important, and I know how to draw those lines of differences. And Mueller is the same for me. So that's, I think, one of the primary reasons why we get along so well.
Hey, Rob, could I just add, think, those are very nice comments. But when you really look at it, it all started, the journey started a little over 4 years ago. We were going over to Oktoberfest every year. I've been going there for 5 years in a row. Unfortunately, we couldn't go this year because coronavirus canceled it. We had our table already, but we got canceled. But we were there about a little over 4 years ago, sitting at PKF Munich's office, which is a huge partner of LucaNet in Germany. And I was talking to Alex Paul and Sebastian Wodorf, and they basically talked about LucaNet. And they talked to us about how effective LucaNet was to a lot of their German clients. I think you have over 3,000 German clients that use LucaNet, and how it was an important software technology that really, like I said earlier, sped up closing, helped with consolidation. And so I immediately thought it would be a great thing to get into, and came back. And the other reason, so there's really a couple of reasons of our success, and the reason why we like working with you, Rob. It's not only because of our partnership with PKF Munich and how close we are with that firm there in Munich. Second of all, is we love all the people at LucaNet. The LucaNet folks in Berlin and Munich, I've been to all their offices. I've been to your office in Philadelphia just last week. Like, you guys are all great to work with. So it's great to have people you work with that you really like. But the third reason why we're very successful is because of Danielle Medine, who is sitting on the screen. Because when I came back, she embraced it, and she took it over as our leader within PKF Mueller. So she is the leader of it. Maybe Danielle, did you want to just talk a little bit about your how effective, kind of the different areas that you've used LucaNet for some of our clients in the United States?
Yeah, I think to two different points, right? So we've helped our clients with their consolidation process, their planning process, especially during this COVID time where they need to switch back and forth between different scenarios and really kind of quickly move through the process of making business decisions. And also, being on the flip side of that and helping them with their struggles or with their challenges, I should say, being in all of the different jurisdictions and really helping them understand what nexus they have and where there's risk, and really just partnering approaching kind of holistically to attack the market has really been beneficial on both sides, I think. And especially for me, it's exciting. It's great to work with. We're helping really just move them into the right direction and also learn a lot from them and the other side of that.
Yep. And I appreciate those comments. And obviously we enjoy working with you guys as well, but I'm not here to try to sell you on working with Dave. I think if you guys have met him before, you know how exciting and of a person he can be. But I think it's important too that we can also talk a little bit about how the partnerships that we've established, whether it be with PKF Mueller or some of the other firms, have actually helped us grow, and how important that's going to be for other companies that are trying to expand in the U.S., how these partnerships really are essential. So with PKF, obviously, or with Mueller PKF, we had a core need, a service need that we addressed with them. And we began expanding that into really more of a market-based approach and a market need that we could both help each other with. So it's really important that when you take a look at these partnerships, you're not just simply going after them for a service. You're going at them as a relationship to see really how it can grow, whether it's through other introductions or just through other parts of the business. And I think we've done that very, very well at PKF Mueller, as they both just attested.
Yeah, and if I might, sorry, Rob, if I might jump in here, is just one question. How did you meet, Dave? I think you were referring to Oktoberfest, but was that by accident, by chance, or did one of you reach out to the other, directly?
Yeah, it's a real good question, because what I try to do is keep your eyes open, I guess. So when we were sitting in PKF Munich's office, which is right on Maximilian Street there, which is in the heart of it's like Michigan Avenue, I guess, in Chicago. We were sitting up in their conference room, and what we do at PKF is we collaborate. Collaboration is important. So PKF Munich was just telling us kind of some of their success stories and how they're using LucaNet to really expand and to be proactive services for their clients. And it really intrigued me, because I think being proactive with clients in an accounting profession is the essential thing. And so I'm always looking for the proactive way of doing things. So that's kind of like how it happened. They just decided to tell us about it because it's something that they were passionate about. And I read the passion with Alex Paul when he was telling me about LucaNet. So his passion kind of went to me, and then my passion went to Danielle, and that's kind of how it happened. And then we've met Rob after that. I mean, really, Rob was after we already kind of made our mind we were going to work with LucaNet. I'm sorry. So
I had nothing to do with it then, Dave. I appreciate that.
All right, Rob. I just say it like it is. What can I say? But you obviously have been great to work with too in the U.S. But it's like we knew we were kind of already sold by the time we were working with our colleagues in Munich, because they already were using it with Siemens and Linde and some of the other very large companies. They were working with Siemens quite a bit with it. So it was just a no-brainer to get into it. So sorry for the long answer, Mario.
I think just to sort of summarize that, and this is something that we've been very lucky with here at LucaNet, is that you can leverage partnerships that have been established by your brand that's already existing in other countries. And that's really what happened with us, right? So and then you can grow from there. So as a subsidiary here, our partnership with Dave's network was very, very strong in the DACH regions. And because of that, we were able to leverage that same partnership here in the US. And as I said, there were some adjustments made, but we both understand why those adjustments are there. And it really helps us grow. And that's not the first partnership, it's not the first relationship that we've had to establish through that network we have internally. And I would always recommend to expanding companies to really think about how you can work together with your group to really expand, because in the end, there's always going to be, not always, but there's oftentimes, if you are a global entity, you're working with other global entities, and you should take advantage of that fact and work together across the globe. And that really does lead us to a bunch of success stories that we have. No desire to read these to you. Obviously, you can do the same, but in the end, you can see the smiling faces. You can see the happiness. You can read the happiness that we bring, and that was really our focus. And that's been our focus in the U.S., which is really that customer-centric view versus a product view, which is a little bit of a difference from the German side, where it really is the product will speak for itself, and then the customer will be happy. In the end, the goal is both the same, customer satisfaction and delivery of value, but how do you get to that point, and what are you emphasizing? And through these success stories, I think we can really show that both methodologies work. Obviously, in Germany, it's been growing forever, and it's worked very, very well. But this has been working for us here in the U.S., and really, it's a small change for us here. It didn't cost us any money, it didn't cost us any effort, and we really were able to become successful with it.
Hey, Rob?
Yes, sir.
Can I just add one thing on that last slide with Mark Pritchard? The interesting thing of Mark is that when you introduced me to Mark when I came to Philadelphia a couple of years ago, and Mark's a good guy, so he was using LucaNet at Data Mail. Since they sold Data Mail sold, he left Data Mail. He went to another company called United Safety. He immediately is using LucaNet at that company. Danielle and I met with Mark a week ago when we were in Philadelphia. He's a power user of LucaNet. And the interesting thing, of the whole thing, is that United Safety is growing like a weed, because they've come up with a technology for these air filtration systems that basically emit hydrogen peroxide molecules in the air, and they sit there, and they're going to go into all the metro trains, airplanes, and everything, schools. They're already in all the Chipotle restaurants in the United States. And because of that, I knew a company in Germany that we do some work with called Mann Hummel, and I've introduced their sales guy with Mann Hummel's. And just because of the LucaNet connection, quite frankly, they might gain a market in Germany now of their products. I mean, who knows how it's going to happen? But it's just fun stuff, Rob.
Relationships, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's, that was supposed to be one of the core concepts here, is that the relationships are how we all grow. And it's so funny that we started in Germany, we went back to the US, we then met each other through Germany, we came back to the US, and now you're introducing US people to other German companies, and it's going to continue being that cyclical relationship. And that's something that we can all leverage. So talking about those lessons learned, I mean, that's really the core, one of the core takeaways here is those partnerships, and how can we leverage those partnerships that we talked about. Another big one for us was really those legal and tax shifts. How do we get ourselves to market through the preparation? What assets do we have? Our market approach and our digital appearance. These were all main focuses for us as a business. These were things that we really determined drive the differences that we need for this market. And in the end, our company had to decide where to be flexible. And I think any company that's looking to expand or continue to grow has to make those determinations themselves. Where can that flexibility exist, and where can the inflexibility exist? As I said, for us, it wasn't necessarily the product where that flexibility had to be there. The product was able to cover everything that we needed. It was really how did we approach the market, and how did we spend our resources to maximize that return. That's where our flexibility existed. It didn't necessarily cause a tremendous amount of overhead on either side of business, but it really did provide the value that we needed. Any business really needs to find that line. They need to draw the line in the sand. Where can they be flexible to allow themselves to localize as much as possible, but while still maintaining that core global structure and brand that they need to maintain. For me, that's it. I know I went a little quick. and probably would have won a little bit slower if I was bogged down by a steak like last time. But I'd like to open the floor up to anybody with any questions.
Rob, you're good. You're good. No worries. Thank you so much. And you know, me being born and raised in Germany as well, so German passport, I am German. You know, through and through. There is so many things in there where I just say, yep, exactly. Especially when it comes to how, you know, how to explore the market. There is one thing that I liked about the slide where you compared the sausages with the cheeseburgers that I here in the States see all the time with companies that, you know, come to the States for the first time. You know, Germans are really very much data driven. You try to make the sales point with a data sheet. You know, this is a machine and equipment and it can do this and that and that. And what we then always try to tell those people is, you know, the first question that you would have to answer to a potential client is, why should you care? You know, they're not so much looking into the data points of that, you know, equipment or machinery, but why should you care about it? And I think, you know, I'm going to make use, if you don't mind, if I'm going to make use of the sausages and cheeseburger slide in the future. That just David, is that something that you at PKF, when you work together with clients, when you help and support them here in the United States, is that something that you focus on too? I mean, of course, you're doing the financial things and the support with the financial questions and all of that, but also those, you know, intercultural changes, especially if it comes to companies that do not have Americans working for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, you know, as you know, Mario, I kind of joke about it, but my German language is, I think I got up to a high point of maybe 12% fluency. Okay, now it's down. I mean, I only have a couple phrases I could say, but it has a swear word in it, so I can't say it right now. And there's but one thing I can tell you though, Mario, is that we make a lot of trips to Germany, and I think to answer your question is, I think understanding the cultural differences between U.S. and Germany, and there's a lot of similarities. But there's some differences, and I think that might be more important than knowing the language, because most Germans understand English. I mean, especially in the bigger cities. But I think culturally they're still different. You know, certain things like you got to have an agenda. When you go to a meeting, have an agenda. You know, and hey, one thing I got to tell you though, that I think this is another one of those things where it's like the questions that are. What are some of the questions that are not like? People say, I have a quick question for you. That's a total false statement, right? There's no such thing as a quick question. But one thing I'm noticing with the Germans is that they're late to meetings more than they used to be. Like they always said like promptness. Well, I'm just saying, I think sometimes they're falling into our bad American habits. That's all.
There's a phrase that all my colleagues use or used to use was, you know, 5 minutes early is on time, being on time is late, and being late is unacceptable, right? Which we have the same saying here. But nobody here followed that. You know, I was very excited to be here on this particular meeting on time. So, you know, I'm definitely the key violator there.
Great. I would just like to open it up to the audience. So whenever you have questions in the audience, just raise your hand or type your question into the question box and we can see it then and put you through. So feel free to join the conversation that we have here. Let me just check real quick if we have questions in here already. We don't. No, so far. I mean, that's a good sign, Rob and Dave, that you covered, you know, the most important points here. Anything else, Rob, that you would like to point out to companies that might be interesting to, you know, interested to enter the U.S. market, or even U.S. companies that might be interested to partner with German companies, especially, or I would assume Swiss and Austrian, because in the end we're all the same there. Is there something that you say, hey, listen, this is the things we've learned and this is most crucial?
Yeah, so from my perspective, I think always respecting sort of those cultural differences and allowing them to set expectations is the key. And I think there's a level of directness that you see in American market that people don't necessarily expect, but you know, how can you soften that directness sometimes is really the key. Whereas in Germany, sometimes the softening of that directness isn't necessarily there, but it's still appreciated in both countries. So any type of relationship you get in, both in the US, both in Germany, it is very important to level set expectations from the beginning and be very direct in both instances, right? No one gets offended. I've had some very, very heated conversations in a German space, and then went out for beers and had one of the best times of my life, right? So it is one of those things where it's totally okay to speak your mind, to be as direct as you can be, set those expectations, but you have to live up to them. And I think that's the same in the US, and that's the same in Germany. That's how you build trust, that's how you build a relationship. So there's really, in that sense, culturally, we're the exact same. And I think as long as you kind of manage some of these other steps, you'll have a very successful expansion.
Great. David, from your experience as a company working together with so many German clients then over there, also across the world, but anything to add to what Rob just said?
I just think that, again, you need, accounting firms by nature. I'm just telling you, I've only been doing this for 40 years, and actually at PKF Mueller for 40 years, starting when I was 21. But the one thing I've learned is being proactive, and it goes back to this timeliness. That's critical. That drives everything. And what I find with most accountants around what I talk to is that they're really deadline driven. Everything's about deadlines, and it's all about what you have to do. But it's what clients really like more are things that they don't know what they should know and what they need to do. And that's really, I'm telling you, I see that all the time. That's why I always tell people I don't have my day is kind of a blank slate a little bit because I'm just CEO, So my job is to be sure every one of our clients is getting premier service, and premier services meaning that I got to be sure that we're thinking differently than anybody else is, And that's why the LucaNet thing. That's why when we bring in a client, that's a German-owned subsidiary or a Italian-owned subsidiary or UK-owned subsidiary, we go and visit them. Like I'm like a cage, I'm like a caged animal right now. Like I haven't been able to get over to Germany since I was there for Carnival in September with about 500,000 crazy Germans, And that was the last time I was over there, February 20th to 24th. So now I've been grounded. But we picked up a few new German subsidiaries during COVID. We picked up a couple Italian-owned subsidiaries, and we got to get over there and visit them because we don't just do the work here. We go visit the parent company, so we kind of know what the main headquarters is talking about. Because in most cases, the German parent company is calling the shots, right? You need to know and that's why I know one of the owners of LucaNet. We've been over there talking to Dominic. Actually, I just had a call with him last week. With Dominic. So, I mean, I like to know the owners. I like to know who's the decision maker. So that's why we go there 4 or 5 times a year. Not only do I like the beer, Mario, but the beer is good. And I love the people. The people are great. Like, and the Germans love Americans. Like, this is a great relationship between US and Germany. It's a match made in heaven. Like, we've been probably our closest ally, the British and Germans very close, so it's been good to see.
Great, thank you so much. And as a German myself, I take that as a compliment. Thank you so much, David. However, what I have to admit, and then what my impression is now living here in the States for 6+ years now is, and I'm not sure if you can agree to that, Dave and Robert, if you notice that, but our picture of what the United States is and what people in the United States are and what America is very much driven by what we see on TV or in the movies, less so by experience. And as an American, if you know that, or if you have that in the back of your mind, at least you can understand a little, oh yeah, I have to correct something here. That's that's not how we do it. That's not how we work. Well, final call for our audience to hand in some questions.
Mario, let me just add, while you're looking at that, I'll kind of do a little filler for you. One of the things I noticed going over to Germany when I talk to German colleagues or German parent companies is they're really sometimes they don't have a true appreciation or knowledge of the complex U.S. tax system. Like, and I think Rob alluded to it. You know, when you're in the United States, we have 50 states and they all have different sales tax, income tax. It's kind of like, you know, Europe has VAT, the VAT tax. It's kind of similar, but I think the U.S., that's one of the most complicated parts of the United States is being in the U.S. because every state needs money. Like, that's the whole thing. They're all going after, if they feel they have a claim to it, they're going to come after it. So I just think that that's another thing that gives as the entry point for companies coming to the United States. It's something they need to get a good grasp of, is their state and local tax issues.
Right, and this just goes to say that you know, there is no such thing like the United States.
Right.
You know, it is 50 different states, and even within those states, you might have different regions. Well, maybe some cultural changes are in there. But an interesting point that you point out, and that I always put a lot of emphasis on when I'm over there in Germany, is what you have to get used to is, you know, in Germany, we like to complain about the 16 federal states we have, and to a certain extent, they have their right to come up with their own legislation, not in terms of taxes, but to a certain extent, we always complain about that, you know. Here we have that times 50. And sometimes even counties come up with, you know, we put something on top of that and on top of that. And to explain that is hilarious. And that's why I'm so happy that, you know, you guys are there to support companies, to make them aware of that and say, hey, you cannot do that on your own. Trust me, you cannot. You need a partner. You need someone you can work with and you can rely on. Looking at the question box, there is no questions in there, so I assume we did a very good job. No questions. Thank you so much. Thank you, Robert. To you, LucaNet, great company. We're going to have the presentation and the recording available for the audience, and we're going to share it as well. And here's a little teaser. In December, stay tuned. Our next business luncheon here is going to be with PKF. And Dave, do you want to spill the beans about the topic a little already?
I mean, put the pressure on me now, Mario. That's heavy pressure. But no, I think right now we're probably going to give an overview of any tax changes as it affected by affected by the presidential race, whoever wins. And you know, at one point Mario said, "Hey Dave, do you want to give the program today on any tax changes?" And I said, Mario, like, I don't know if I'm going to know who wins by that date. Like, come on. So I think I'm hoping, Mario, I hope by next month we're going to know who won. Let's put it that way.
Well, fingers crossed. But anyway,
no one expects it. No one expects it, Dave.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're going to join us in the next business luncheon in December. Stay tuned to the audience. We're going to come up with more information really soon. Also the registration. And Danielle, she is hopefully still in the background somewhere. Thank you so much. Dave, thank you so much. And Rob, thank you. There she is. Thank you so much for joining us. All right.
Mario, Dave, Danielle, thank you for the invite again. I always enjoy presenting to your group. Hopefully that continues yearly. And next year we can get together. You guys can bring some German beer to Chicago, and we can at least get a small enjoyment out of that. So again, thank you all of you very much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.